So, should you care about Germany? Should you care about China? Does the macro affect the micro? Yeah. So, anyway, I thought I'd give you a little peek around. Finishing up the high tunnels. Here's one. This is the 20 foot by 60 foot, and it's got cherry trees in here already, and blueberries and stuff we want to get through the winter, and also have them protected from the moose. A couple bulls came in with a cow. Weren't legal with what we would call tweeners up here in Alaska in this area. But I want to talk about Germany and how it's going to affect you, because over the last 2 days there's been some very, very interesting developments. And namely, those developments revolve around the cutting off of fuel to Germany and Europe by the Russians, because they want Europe to stop supporting the Ukrainians with ammunition and supplies and personnel. And the other one is the response by Germany by nationalizing the Russian holdings in Germany. So how do you start a kinetic war? You steal people's stuff. And that's what's happening right now. Now, there's going to be a kinetic war in Europe. We know it's going to happen. It's just when. And 9 times out of 10, it always happens as a very big surprise. It's one of those things, it's kind of like the first shot heard around the world. How did that happen? My belief is not the idea that they had an orchestrated attack against the government at that time, which was the British government, the King's soldiers, the Redcoats. What happened probably was that there was an NDA. There was a negligent discharge. There was an ND. And so a whole war could have started because somebody couldn't keep their booger hooker out of their trigger guard and fired off a round, and that initiated the shooting back and forth, and you had a war starting. So what's going to happen in Germany is going to be a situation that Russia says, we're going to take back our belongings, and in the process, you're going to go back to an ancient war. And remember, in the military, you're taught that you go to your training. You fall back to your training. You don't jump up to meet the challenge. You actually will fall back to your training. So however well you train is how far you will fall back and then respond in that manner, right? So in this situation, we have ancient animosities between the Germans and the Russians that go back thousands of years. If you've ever studied the Teutonic Knights, the German knights who actually invaded Russia against the Slavs, you can see that origin of the fighting that is going to be picking up. But more importantly, for those of us who do not live in Europe, for those of us who live in the Americas, you need to be very clear of what that means to you as supply. Because supply issues, if you think they're bad now, and they're getting worse already, just with normal bureaucracy and inability of the infrastructure to support anything anymore in the way that it used to, because there were people who actually knew what they were doing and were supporting it, as compared to what's happening now, is you have some very evil motherfuckers who are trying to destroy the United States, because we're the strongest ones and we're the last bastion against their big plans around the world, which is total enslavement. And if you don't understand what that really means, you need to travel a bit. Because what we've seen, for you guys, my brothers and sisters who have spent time in some really fucked up places, you're going to see in your own country, our country, that same stuff. Which, as I remember, in El Salvador in 1989, that was pretty bad in the streets of San Salvador in November and December. So the key is, what can you do personally on a micro level? This is the macro we're talking about. We're talking about Germany, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about Russia, and we're also talking about China. Another thing that happened today, which is there was a get-together. This is interesting. I'll be talking about something else later, which is about BRICS and how this affects BRICS and how BRICS is going to fumble too. And if you don't know who BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, right? And they're trying to get South Africa in there. Is it BRICS? Yeah, and it includes South Africa. So those are actually the nations that are involved in BRICS as it is now. They're trying to get other nations into that, kind of like a mini United Nations for themselves, which revolves around a monetary standard. But what's going to happen to you is anything that you rely on in terms of supply coming to you from Europe or anywhere from on the other side, from the Pacific side, or from the Atlantic side. Any supply that you need to get, if you have not purchased it now, I would highly suggest buying it within the next 2 weeks and getting it to your place. I mean, I'm starting to really breathe a sigh of relief because the last stove that we ordered from Hecco over in Pennsylvania, the Amish, make an amazing Hecco 520. Check it out. Go check out the Hecco 520. It's a phenomenal wood cook stove. And we also have the Rizzoli. So, like I say, I'm doing a log home build this winter, and I'll be putting the Hecco in that one, and you'll see how that's done. And then also in the house that we live in now, you'll see the Rizzoli, and that's the LT90 that we purchased 2 years ago. And that was exported. That was actually shipped from Italy a year ago. I got it, well, actually it was last winter. Yeah, it was last winter, so it's a year and a half ago now. So we've been planning, and I hope you've been planning too. As I told you, I came back to Alaska 2012 because of what I'd seen in 2007, 2008. And it revolved all around energy and fossil fuels, and especially transportation. So right now we have some major issues that are happening over on the other side of the Atlantic that are going to be affecting you rapidly within the next 1 to 2 months. I mean, it's interesting. I've been listening to Peter Zion, and he's a great researcher. He really puts it together. But his analysis, man, he's been wrong on a lot of forecasts. And I'll tell you why. It's mainly because he's never had any field experience. And you guys who've had field experience, you know what we're talking about. You haven't seen what's happening on the ground. If you haven't seen what's happening on the ground, you can do all your ethereal B-52 up in the air bombing strategy. But when it comes down to it, if you're not down deep in the jungle, walking in the mud, and seeing people face to face, eye to eye, and interacting with them, you don't have really good analysis of what's happening. So hopefully my analysis will get you going to get your products, whatever you need, because it's not only the actual product that's made. Excuse me, I'm getting some freaking fireweed seeds floating around. It's not only the products that you're buying, but also where they get their supply of materials in order to build the product that you want to buy or you will need. So everybody's been buying guns, everybody's been buying ammo, but what about simple things like how are you going to heat? How are you going to cool? How are you going to do so without the modern conveniences that we have now? For the same reason, we're up in Alaska and we have to get a wood cook stove to be able to cook inside, because how can we be guaranteed of propane? How are you going to be guaranteed of propane? In the South, it's the opposite. It's the old cookhouse to the side of the house so that you could cook during the heat of summer. Like Sam Houston. If you ever had an opportunity to go and check out Independence, Texas, and other places like that, you get to look at old architecture that shows you what life was like pre-industrial. And the way things are going right now, we're quickly going to hit a pre-industrial age again in the world, because we are so heavily intertwined. And I'll be talking that in an in-depth, but I just want to give you a quick spot because I got a lot of crap to get done, right? Building high tunnels. I got a moose to put on the ground so I can put it in the freezer. I got ducks I got to go hunt. I've got geese and chickens that need to be butchered. I've got firewood. I got firewood that I got to collect. So right after moose season, I'm going to go get my winter's load of logs that I'll be bucking and splitting of spruce beetle kill. Perfectly cured for the winter. So I hope you're thinking about your winter. And on that, I will talk to you on the flip side. And be sure to like and subscribe. I want to make sure you get the next news point that I put, because what I'm trying to do is I get the news and I decipher the news. I try to get my spin on what's happening that will be most beneficial to you. Like, subscribe, and please share with all your friends, because the only way that I'm getting any noise out there, because I'm heavily freaking shadow banned on Instagram, I'm heavily shadow banned on Facebook, and the reason is because I wrote that book, and Discovery Channel has pacts with Facebook and Instagram. So that's why people like me who actually speak out about Back in the day, it was reality TV, and now I'm speaking up about what's really happening because evidently most of you are not getting the news, because if you would, you wouldn't be walking around with your heads in the sand. And having your head in the sand is a bad place to be when you are being actively attacked by people who do not have your best interests at heart. Good luck and best wishes, and talk to you on the flip side.